Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah. We are on Daf Chaf Aleph, Amud Aleph, 17 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned L'schut Yehoshua ben Diana, Yael bat Rivka, and Moshe ben Asi. This Amud is also being learned Leilui Nishmat Tzipora bat Yitzchak. And we are... Thank you. We're in the middle of the machloket that we started of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi about whether or not you could sell houses and fields in Eretz Yisrael, in Syria, and in Chutz La'aretz to the Ovdei Avodah Zarah, to either worshiping people. Now, we mentioned before that this is an offshoot of the Gemara that we had before about a pasuk of Lot Chonem, Lot Titen Lahem Chania Bekarka. We learned 3 halachot from the pasuk of Lot Chonem. Lot Chonem means Lot Titen Lahem Chania Bekarka. Don't give them a foothold in Eretz Yisrael. It also means Lot Titen Lahem Chen. Do not give them praises to the idol worshipping individuals, and also means Lo titen lahem matnat chinam. Don't give them free gifts. Those 3 halachot the Gemara discuss how grammatically we learn from the pasuk of Lo techonem. Now we are discussing currently the halakha of not selling land in Eretz Yisrael to them. So we saw the machloket Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Meir is much more machmir, stringent than is Rabbi Yossi. He holds that you cannot, everything is one step higher than Rabbi Yossi. You cannot do, again, give you 3 variables over here. Of course, selling is more stringent than renting. Eretz Yisrael is more stringent than Syria, and Syria is more stringent than Chutz La'aretz. That's the 3 variables that are there. And Rabbi Yossi holds in Eretz Yisrael everything is asur. Rabbi Meir holds in Syria you could only rent houses but not fields, and in Chutz La'aretz you could also sell houses and rent fields but not sell fields. And Rabbi Yossi is one level lower than all of those in all those categories. In other words, he holds that in Eretz Yisrael you could rent houses but not rent or sell fields. You can't sell houses either, and again it trickles down one level in each one. Now the Gemara is discussing what exactly is the reason behind each one of them. We're going to say and see that the difference between them categorically is a different machloket, and the different machloket is whether kibush yachid shemeh kibush or lav shemeh kibush. What does that mean? That means Eretz Yisrael was given with boundaries to the Jews, right? Min hayam gadol ve'ad arba yeh gevulechem. But also the pasuk says, "Kol makom asher tidroch bo kaf raglechem bo lachem yeh." Right? Any place that you step when you go to Eretz Yisrael and you conquer, bo lachem yeh, it will be yours. So which one is it? You have the given boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, of the lands of the 7 umot, the 7 nations that we call them. And then you have this beginning of the pasuk, it's literally in the same pasuk, that Kol makom asher tidroch kaf raglechem bo lachem yeh. Any place that you go and conquer will be yours. So the pshat is that you have the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael primer, and then after you conquer those, you could expand the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael to surrounding neighborhoods as well. But that's only according to different Rishonim. For instance, according to the Ramban, that's only when you ask the Urim Vetumim, you consult with HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the chest plate of the Kohen Gadol, which is what they would do before going to war. And according to Rashi, it would be also with 600,000 people. It will be all of the nation together doing something, not the king deciding one day that we need to expand the boundaries of Eretz Yisrael. And according to the Rashba, you need it to be in chronological order. You need to first conquer the lands of the 7 Umot, and then you could expand. If you do it haphazardly, not in a chronological order, if you haven't taken the primary boundaries of Eretz Yisrael, you can't just go and expand, right? Now, all of these 3 things become very important in understanding of this machloket. Now, Rabbi Meir holds, as we will see, that kibush yachid, this is based on our girsa, right? That kibush yachid shemeh kibush. That even when David HaMelech went and took Syria, that was considered a legitimate conquest, and therefore Eretz Yisrael and Syria in status of the halakha are one and the same for practical purposes, short of few things that we will discuss even according to Rabbi Meir. In other words, even according to Rabbi Meir, that Syria, biblically speaking, Midoraita is considered like Eretz Yisrael, still, it does make a little difference. In Syria, there are certain leniencies there still that we will discuss. Rabbi Yossi, however, holds that no. Kibush Yachid Lav Shemeh Kibush. What David HaMelech did was not aligned with what we call Kibush Rabim. It was considered a Kibush Yachid that was not in line with the chronology, according to Rashba, of first getting all of Eretz Yisrael, then expanding, or asking the Urim Vetumim, or doing it with 600,000. However you want to slice it, what David HaMelech did with Syria was not fitting those boundaries, and hence, even though that it became Kibush Milchama, it became ours, but halachically speaking, does not share the same parameters as Eretz Yisrael. And that would make big differences in our sugya. Because now you want to know if this land, is it asur for me, midoraita, to sell it to a goy? Or is it not asur midoraita to sell it to a goy, right? That's the question we're asking. So if you say, kibush yachid shemeh kibush, like Rabbi Meir, then we're dealing with the isur deoraita in Syria as well, because it's the same thing as Eretz Yisrael. You can't sell it. If you say we're dealing with a kibush yachid lav shemeh kibush, so then the whole thing is the Rabbanan, right? The whole thing is a gezerah because it's all in one package of Eretz Yisrael, and it could get mixed up with Eretz Yisrael. That's a Rabbanan. That's a gezerah, a rabbinic enactment. The Chazal would say, well, Syria, even though that's really not considered Eretz Yisrael, we're going to deal with it in some aspects like Eretz Yisrael, right? So that's going to be the main core of today's Gemara, understanding of the difference between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi and their halachic ramifications, and then what's the halacha today? Well, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi or like Rabbi Meir. So says the Gemara. Let's do this together. 17 lines down. Besuria maskirin batim. We learned that in Syria you could do rentals of houses, but not rentals of fields. So says the Gemara, Maishna mechira delo. Why can't you sell a land in Syria to a goy? Why is it asur? So says the Gemara, Mishum mechira de Eretz Yisrael. It's a gezerah because Syria and Eretz Yisrael are very close, right? And therefore, you can't sell in Syria because it's going to come to get mixed up with Eretz Yisrael. So then the Gemara says, wait a second. Ehachi mischirut na benigzor. Why can you allow schirut of rentals in Syria? Why is that mutar? Let's make a gezerah on that as well. The Gemara gives the obvious answer. He says, He gufah gezerah, v'anan nikum menigzor gezerah le-gezerah, says the whole thing by itself is a gezerah. Right? The whole thing is a rabbinic thing. The selling of of land in Syria is a gezerah. What does that mean? It means you don't allow selling because it's going to get mixed with selling in Eretz Yisrael. That's a gezerah. It's an enactment. It's not midoraita, right? And the rule is, normally speaking, even though that the Safat says sometimes we do it, normally speaking, we don't do a double gezerah, a gezerah on top of a gezerah. In other words, let's make it asur to sell in Syria because people are going to mix it up with Eretz Yisrael. And not only that, let's make it asur to rent in Syria because rental gets mixed up with sale. So that's like two steps. Rental, you're prohibiting because it's going to get mixed up with selling. But selling itself is not asur in Syria midoraita, according to what we're learning. It's only midrabanan. So that's like, be worried for this, which by itself is being worried for that. That's already too far-fetched of a gezerah. We don't do that, says the Gemara. Says, V'haschirut sadeh b'Surya. Gemara says, wait a second, that's not, it's beautiful what you're saying, but it's inconsistent. Because, what's the halakha of a field in Syria? What's the halakha? What can and can't you do in Syria? So says the Gemara, Sechirut Sadeh, even rental of a field in Syria, you told me, is asur. So why is it asur? Again, if it's not part of Eretz Yisrael, so then it's not asur midoraita. So selling would be mutar from the Torah. And rental, you say it's asur. So isn't that like two steps? That rental, let's be stringent because it's going to come to sale. And sale by itself because it's going to come to sale in Eretz Yisrael. That's two steps. And you're still telling me that that's asur. So that's inconsistent. Now the Gemara says the main part here. The Gemara says no. This is not gezerah le gezerah. The question of the Gemara is the Besuria, Sadeh the Besuria, the Gezerah, the Gezerah, Iveka Kazrina. And we still make this Gezerah. Gemara answers the fundamental answer. Hatam, love Gezerahu. Gemara says no. This is not a Gezerah, le Gezerah. You know what Rabbi Meir holds? Kasava, Rabbi Meir holds, Kibush Yachid Shemeh Kibush. That when David HaMelech conquered the land of Syria of back then, that was considered a legitimate conquest of the land, and hence it's equal in all of its halachic parameters to Eretz Yisrael. It's just the expansion of Eretz Yisrael. So selling land in Syria, is it biblical? Is it Deoraita or Derabanan? Deoraita, right? Selling land is Deoraita. Now, how does that change everything? That changes it that now we don't have a double gezerah anymore. The way now it becomes is, according to Rabbi Meir, selling land in Eretz Yisrael or in Syria is isur deoraita av lo techonem lo titen lahem chanaya bekarka. Right? Rental, it's one gezerah only. Right? It's no longer two gezerahs. Whether it's a field or it's a land of residential, it will be, or office, it will be one gezerah. Because if you rent, you may come to sell. And selling is Isur Deoraita already, right away. Because everything is Eretz Yisrael. So now, how does the Shita of Rabbi Meir play out? It's like this, very easy now. It's mamash simple. Selling a land in both Syria and in Eretz Yisrael is Asur, nothing to talk about. Right? It's asur. So asur doraita. Rentals, says the Gemara, depends. We mentioned rental of a house in Syria is, we mentioned, is mutar. Selling, it will be asur. So why is it, thank you, why is it that rental is asur? In Syria, in the field, so says the Gemara here, it's very simple, because land of a field that you work has two Isurim. So Chazal decided that because it has two Isurim, we are going to make a gezerah even on rentals. But a house, a office, or a storage space that doesn't have two reasons, is only one isur, they didn't make a gezerah. Rentals, mutar. Right? That's the reason. Simple. There's no double gezerah anywhere. Selling, asur across the board. Rentals, depends if it's a office space, if it's a storage, mutar. But if it is a field, which you have two prohibitions, the prohibition of lo titel lahem chanaya bekarka, of giving them foothold in the land, and also the prohibition of mafkia mimaserot. You are now nullifying this land from being able to give maserot, right? Which is also isur deoraita, according to Rabat, maybe the Rabbanan, but it's a isur nevertheless. So says the Gemara. Let's read this. So says the Gemara. Kasavar kibush yachid shemek kibush. Rabbi Meir holds that kibush yachid of David HaMelech conquering Syria is a proper, legitimate conquest, and therefore, sadeh it betarti gazru berabanan. A field that has two isurim, it has the chanaya bekarka and also has maserot. Chazal made a gezerah that you can't even rent, but batim delet betarte, houses, office spaces, storage, and all of that, that only has one isur of chanaya bekarka, that Chazal did not make a gezerah on it, and therefore it will be mutar to rent. So that becomes the shita of Rabbi Meir. Amazing. This is like flawless shita of Rabbi Meir. Now we're going to deal with the shita of Rabbi Yossi. Bechutz la'aretz, we mentioned, now the Gemara says, Sadeh de'it betarti gazru b'rabanan. In Chutz la'aretz we said, what's the halacha? There's only one thing that's asur. You can't sell a field. Everything else you could do. You could rent everything, and you could even sell houses. The only thing you cannot do is selling a field. Right? In Chutz la'aretz. That's what we said. So says the Gemara, what's the reason? Sadeh deit betarti, again, the field has two isurim, and therefore Chazal were more concerned, and they said you can't sell a field, even though that's in Chutz la'aretz, there's no connection with Eretz Yisrael. But batim delet beutarte, but houses that only has one, lo gazur b'rabanan. Chazal did not make a gezerah. Now Rabbi Yossi says, Rabbi Yossi Omer be'Eretz Yisrael maskirin la'im batim, that in Eretz Yisrael Rabbi Yossi is mekel, that you could rent houses, but you can't sell houses. So says the Gemara, my tamos sadot de'it behutarti gazur b'rabanan, batim delet behutarti lo gazur b'rabanan. What's the reason that Rabbi Yossi is more machmir in Sadot versus Batim? Now this is simple. The beginning is simple. In other words, what did Rabbi Yossi hold? Rabbi Yossi holds that you could rent in Eretz Yisrael houses, but you cannot rent fields. So says the Gemara, the reason is fields are two isurim, so you're more machmir. That's conventional, right? The difference of Sadot and Batim is conventional. There's two isurim, you're always more machmir. But now the problem becomes Syria. Obe Syria mochrin lahem. In Syria, says the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yossi, you could sell to them houses. How in the world can you sell houses in Syria? Have you ever thought about that? According to Rabbi Yossi, you could sell houses in Syria to Oved Avodah Zarah. I thought Chaniyat Bekarka, Pasuk. And there's no way around this. The only way around this is Rabbi Yossi does not hold that kibush yachid is shemek kibush. He holds what David HaMelech did was not aligned with the rules of conquest that would make it Eretz Yisrael, either because he hadn't conquered the rest of the primary part of Eretz Yisrael, or he didn't ask Urim, but to me it wasn't 600,000. It was not done k'halacha, and therefore it does not make it part of Eretz Yisrael, biblically speaking. Because if it is biblically part of Eretz Yisrael, like Rabbi Meir holds, there's no way that it would be mutar to sell houses. That's a Yisur D'Oraita, right? So says the Gemara, Ma'itama, Kasavar Kibush Yachid, Lo Shemeh Kibush. Rabbi Yossi holds that Kibush Yachid is not considered Kibush. Ve'sadeh de'it batarti gazu Rabbanan, batim de'let betarti lo gazu Rabbanan. Therefore, Chazal made a differentiation between sadot and batim. By sadot, we are more machmir. You can't sell a sadeh. You cannot sell a land, a field to an oved avodah zarah because there's two isurim. But the house, Chazal were not so concerned because not considered part of Eretz Yisrael. You could even sell in Syria a house to an oved kochavim. Ubechutz la'aretz mochrin elu va'elu, and Rabbi Yossi of course holds that in Eretz Yisrael, in chutz la'aretz rather, you could sell houses, you could sell fields, you could do whatever you want. My tama, what's the reason? Kevan de mirchak lo kasrinan. Once it's very far from Eretz Yisrael, we are not concerned that it's going to get mixed up with Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, you could do it. So here comes the punchline. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, Halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. Halacha is like Rabbi Yossi here. Now we know this already, that Rabbi Meir v'chavero, Halacha ke chavero. Rabbi Meir and his counterpart, any of the counterparts, Halacha is like Rabbi Meir, is the counterpart, it's like chavero, like the other one. So here you have Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi. Halacha would be like Rabbi Yossi. Reasons for it, the Gemara in Eruvin, Gemara in Horayot, of Yud Gimel, there discusses that Halacha is not like Rabbi Meir because lo yardu lesof dato, right? He was a very complicated mind, and it was hard to know if he's meaning what he says la halacha, or is he just exercising some fancy thought process, which he could do. Gemara says he could take a sheretz, he could take a davar tameh and prove to you in 49 different ways that's tahor. And he could do vice versa also. A tremendous mind he had, right? So therefore, halacha is, others say halacha is not like him because he learned from Acher. The Gemara we had in Masechet Chagigah that after Rabbi Meir passed away, Eliyahu Navi said to one of the Tanaim, he said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shema'ata mipume de kula Rav Batan. He says Torah from the mouth of, in the name of all of the Chachamim, but not Rabbi Meir. Right? And they had to fix that and so on. So Rabbi Meir, halacha is not like him, however you slice it. And here is not an exception. Halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, who is more mekel in this area of halacha. So, but says the Gemara, ubirvat, so therefore it means what? It means you could sell houses and fields to the nochrim, to the oved avodah zarah in the chutz la'aretz. It's mutar to do it, right? But Gemara has a restriction on that. Ubirvat shelo ya'asena shchuna. With the exception that you can't sell, if you have, let's say, 3 properties in the same neighborhood, you can't sell 3 to the Oved, because that's already a neighborhood for the Goyim. I can't make it a Goyish Oved Avodah Zarah neighborhood. 1 you could sell, fine. But to sell a lot to them that makes it like a Goyish neighborhood, that already is a bad influence of having the Goyim there, and therefore it becomes a problem. Now, this is something that halachically you have to discuss. First of all, what is considered shechuna? Right? What is considered shechuna? And this, by the way, goes together with the tam of the isur of selling land to Ovdei Avodah Zarah, while it is not asur to sell to a non-Jew in Eretz Yisrael. Right? It's not asur to sell to a goy. It's asur to sell to Oved Avodah Zarah. It's very different. Right? A ger toshav, you want to sell to a ger toshav, chazak u'baruch, no problem. Right? The isur is Ovdei Avodah Zarah because, one of the reasons, because when you have Ovdei Avodah Zarah in the land, they're going to impact and influence the mindset and everything that goes on in the life of a Yid. You know, imagine if a person lives in a Goyish neighborhood, right? That everyone has the tree and the lights and the this, and versus a person that lives in a frum Haredi neighborhood that every day you have a Siyum Shas over here, a Siyum Mishnayot over there. All your neighbors have finished Shas. Well, are you going to not finish Shas? Of course you got to finish Shas, because that's how it works. The standards of humanity, right? Whereas if all your neighbors are doing Avodah Zarah, that also with Arvu Goyim, like the pasuk says, Ve'ilmedu mima'asehim, you get mixed with the Goyim, you learn from them. So here is also Isur of Shchuna. You can't, even though that it's not Asur of Chanayat Karka. So if you have one house you sell to them, fine. But if you're already making the Shchuna that is 3 houses, then already is Asur. So therefore the Gemara says, Ubilvad shelo ya'asena shchuna. Ve'kama shchuna. What is considered in this aspect? What is considered a shchuna? Tana en shchuna pchuta mi shelosha bnei adam. There's no neighborhood less than 3 people. So therefore, 3 houses you cannot sell. If you have one of these like triplexes or quadruple Spanish style things that all the, so you're selling it one building, but there's really 4 houses there, so that already becomes questionable. So says the Gemara, wait a second. V'lechush dilma azil ha Yisrael umazbin lechat ovet kochavim ve'azil leach umazbin letarti. Why aren't you choshesh that you're going to sell this building to one goy, and the one goy is going to go sell it to 2 other people and himself? Now it's going to be 3, right? I sold it to one person. It's a triplex, house. Now I sold to one person. Is that mutar asur? He's going to go maybe sell the other 2 to 2 other of the Avodah Zarah, and that's going to cause some problem. So says the Gemara, Amar Abaye, alifne mefakdinan, alifne de lifne la mefakdinan. We had this Gemara earlier on, when we spoke about lifne iver first time, Daf Yudar Amud Aleph, that the Isur, there also was in the name of Abaye, I believe, that the Isur of lifne iver lo titen michshol, not putting stumbling block in front of a goy, is limited to direct stumbling block, but not an indirect one. In other words, if you are selling to 3 people, that's already a shchuna. You did it. But we're not concerned about I'm going to sell this and he's going to sell that. That's already lifneh de lifneh. That's too much early stage of lifneh iver. As long as you didn't sell it to 3, what happens with it afterwards, if he wants to go and get an ADU in the back and a separate thing, and that's his thing, right? It's not on you, that issue of him selling it to 2 other people and having 3, and therefore that would be considered mutar. Now,
Rabbi, question: if it's already, let's say there's already 3 pagans living there, would it matter to add a 4th? If it's already a pagan neighborhood.
So that becomes a question, and this is actually a question that is very relevant in many cities, that you have Jewish communities as colonial things that they have, like this is from this block to this block is the Jewish community. Where I used to live in Baltimore, it's also like that. The Jewish community started, the core of the Jewish community started in downtown Baltimore, which they still have like an operating shul, but it's like in the middle of nowhere really. And in the 16, 17 years that I was there, the Jewish community, I think every 10 years, it moves a block or 2 towards the other side, because again, what happens is the community grows and the lower part of town really becomes expanded as well, and the Jews kind of are pushed back up, as it goes. So that thing really has we had to see 1 or 2 blocks that was still many older Jewish families were living there, but everyone was selling and moving up. And at some point this becomes a question: is it mutar to sell? You're making this street a Goyish street, which again, these are very vivid things. Crime went up. I still remember those blocks. They had some very heinous crimes happening in them because it had become mainly a non-Jewish neighborhood, and people felt unsafe to live there. And the already living Jewish people had tainas on those who were selling. So you can't sell. You can't sell. You're leaving us over here. No Jews want to buy here anymore, right? So the only way that you could sell it is to sell to a non-Jew. But if you sell to a non-Jew, then we're going to be stuck with the new neighborhood that you created over here. So what exactly is part of this, what's not part of this, is something that Be'ezrat Hashem we will discuss a little bit, especially when we don't have necessarily like Jewish ghettos. It's just neighborhoods in town that moves around. That's something that Be'ezrat Hashem will discuss in the days to come.